Hello, friends of Studio Brule. This is Steve Brule, and it is coffee time. Time where I go over some of the stuff that come across my desk in the last day or two. Hope you have your coffee ready. Today, I'm going to be going over some review of the coronavirus response and lockdowns and references to things like Great Reset and the leftist agendas coming through the UN, coming through the World Economic Forum, in the words coming out of the mouths of the most influential people in the world, referring to the recovery from the self-inflicted wound of the lockdowns, referring to it as the Great Reset. And this comes to mind because recently Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada has come under fire for using the very terms the reset at the World Economic Forum. And in Parliament, the opposition has called him to task on this. And the opposition, predictably, has been accused of peddling conspiracy theories. So we're going to go over a little bit of what the opposition and these lefties, and of course, not the opposition, but what the Trudeau government is calling conspiracy theories, were for the opposition using words coming directly out of the mouths of the very lefties who are pushing for lockdowns and destructions of the economy since the coronavirus came into being. So let's get into a little bit of the review material here. Here we have Gordon Brown. Let's take a look at the date here. March 26th, 2020. March 26th. That is barely 2 weeks after the beginnings of the lockdown, which I spoke about at this time. I think in the end of March I had a coffee session on this topic. Gordon Brown, former Prime Minister of the UK, calls for global government to tackle coronavirus. So, here it is, 2 weeks after the coronavirus started, and and he's not alone in calling for a global government. And yet, people from the first time I point out this, using the very words of the top leaders, most influential people in the world, calling for global government, I'm still called a conspiracy theorist for saying that they want to use the coronavirus and ramping up the fear in order to help usher in a one world government. But here it is, Gordon Brown, 2 weeks after the lockdown started, the so-called flatten the curve, and they were calling for a global government. This is just one of many, many, many things in the news here. And here, this one, March 24th, Trudeau leaves door open to using smartphone data to track Canadians' compliance with pandemic rules. Again, barely 2 weeks into the lockdowns and the pandemic scares, and they're calling for tracking all citizens with their cell phones, full-scale tracking of citizens, and they're calling critics conspiracy theorists. These are the words of the very leaders who are claiming that their critics are peddling conspiracy theories. Let's carry on here. Here in The Guardian, the coronavirus. Nature is sending us a message, says UN chief, environmental chief. In other words, they're tying coronavirus COVID-19 to global warming and climate crisis, conflating the two issues. The unifying thread between these two issues is whipping up hysterical fear among the people of Earth in every one of the first world nations. And the solution that they propose for assuaging your fears is a one world government. They've regularly referred to the need for a global government to tackle global issues like climate change, climate crisis, they're using the words here, and coronavirus crisis. These two are not legitimate crises. Climate change, even anthropomorphic climate change, is in fact likely to be happening, but the problem is that I'm getting terrible construction banging outside here. I don't know if this is coming through for you guys, but it's terribly distracting for me. I might have to close the door here. If you just bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to close the doors to my apartment. Sorry for the delay there, folks. Nature is sending us a message. So they want us to believe that only a one world government can solve these problems. And this is a continuous message since the beginning of the pandemic. And anyone who has been alive with their ears open for the past 25, 30 years knows that these same people have been pushing for the same kinds of strengthening of one world government, strengthening of UN power in order to address this so-called climate change. The issue with climate change is that, yes, human beings are populous enough to affect the globe of the earth, but the predictions of the models, most of the predictions, the balance of the predictions of the models, the real models that they're not talking about is that climate change is not going to really have any significant effect on humanity or much on the planet Earth either. But the alarmists take out the most extreme of the most extreme predictions, and they claim that it is a certainty that without human intervention, without us clamping down on oil use and ushering in a green economy, that somehow we're going to face extinction not only of possibility of humanity, but of many species on Earth. Now, this is a complex topic. Extinction processes and evolutionary processes are constantly going on, but that's not what we're going to get into today. The point of these two issues, the things that connects them, is that they serve the purpose of the elite to frighten the populace into complying with and encouraging the populace to demand that they create a one world government. Let's carry on here. Here, the UN wants to be our world government by 2030. This is in the American Thinker. Let's have a look. Well, sorry, this is one of the headlines that I went over some time ago. This is, I think I touched on this early in the pandemic, but this article goes back to October 27th, 2018. And there's no secret here. The UN has been pushing for, and the people behind the UN have been pushing for a one world government since the creation of the United Nations. And we talked about this before. World leaders, even including Einstein, thought that the United Nations needed to have more power than it does. They were arguing for a one world government as long ago as 1946, and they've never stopped. Here, the National Post. This is in March 27th. 2020, Conrad Black on COVID-19. The world succumbed to a panic of hysteria more than a virus. Lots of people have been aware of this since the beginning of this hysteria. And the elite, with their control of the media, have been doing everything in their power to ramp up the hysteria with ulterior motives. And for this, I am being labeled a conspiracy theorist. Anybody who points out even the very words of the very people trying to bring about this one world government are called a conspiracy theorist. It's insane. And let's carry on. Here in LifeSite News, the United Nations wants a one world government in less than 12 years. And this too was printed just after the other article in 2018. People have been onto this since before the coronavirus. And the coronavirus really is just an excuse. It's whipped up hysteria. Here, Fraser Institute, March 26, 2020. Trudeau government gets unlimited spending authority for 6 months. Trudeau government got this ushered in because the Liberal Party of Canada is almost indistinguishable from the Socialist Party of Canada, which is the new the New Democratic Party, they call it, NDP in Canada, and they're propping up this minority government. No Canadian Prime Minister in Canadian history has ever had the arrogance to seek unlimited spending authority. And I have to say, I'm disappointed in the Conservative movement. I'm disappointed in the Canadian people. I'm disappointed in all of our representatives in Parliament for having the stupidity to give this child emperor unlimited spending power. And when we say unlimited spending power, it literally is unlimited. And he sought to have that for a year and a half, but they didn't get that through. They managed to whittle it down to 6 months. All of this made possible by frightening the hell out of the non-thinking public. The public who are easily whipped up into a hysteria of fear. Here, the Financial Post, March 26, 2020. Lawrence Solomon, the lockdown should be for the old and vulnerable and no one else. And no one else. This was so obvious. It's a shame on our entire medical and health industry that they weren't pushing for this. Or maybe they were, and those who were shoved to the side and silenced. And then they were incentivized to accept and promote the hysteria by enormous subsidies for every case of coronavirus in a hospital. In the U.S., it's up to $40-something thousand per case that they identify as a coronavirus death. And the hospitals, that's a financial incentive to whip up the statistics. Let's move forward here. Here's Sydney Morning Herald. This is in Australia. 6 months in jail, $11,000 fine for leaving your home without a, quote, reasonable excuse. Folks, they have so easily, this is March 31st, 3 weeks after the lockdown, 3 weeks. In a situation in which every thinking person and every medical official should know that you don't quarantine the healthy, you protect the sick. You put all your resources towards the sick and vulnerable. And we knew from the beginning, very beginning, if we look back to that previous headline, that the old and the vulnerable and no one else. That's reasonable, level-headed logic. We would not have destroyed the world economies, but then that destroying the world economies for the regular person was part of the goal. Public health order gives police sweeping power to enforce the latest round of coronavirus. This is tyranny, folks. This is tyranny whipped in so easily within 3 weeks with a hysterical projections of fear and the use of the media and the use of people on the inside in the super wealthy with something to win by it, like Bezos and his Amazon extraordinarily profitable situation from this lockdown. Within 3 weeks, we had tyranny throughout the West growing, and it's growing today. And it's got to the point now that anybody who points out the tyranny that we're living under, the pure tyranny that we're living under, the fascist states that have been ushered in around the world, anybody who points out the fascism is called a conspiracy theorist, even though it's right in front of your eyes. This puts me in mind of a Monty Python skit in which a pet store owner sold a dead parrot to a guy who comes back and complains the parrot is dead. He says, no, he's not. He's sleeping. He bangs the parrot's head on the table. It's as stiff as a block of wood. The guy says, oh, he's sleeping. He's tired. He's hungry. They're just going to lie straight to your face, and the hysterical public who have bought into all this fear-mongering are just going to say, okay, yeah. There was somebody, I forget now, who said that it's easier to convince people of outrageous lies than it is to convince them that they were wrong in accepting those lies. And that's exactly what's going on today. All of us need to wake up. They are ushering in tyranny and fascism all around the world. And it's been so easy that that's what we should be frightened about. How easily the public and the masses have caved in, given up their freedom, accepted all manner of ridiculous restrictions and destructions of your rights and freedoms, all in the manner of a fear that does not warrant any of this action. It's us the public, who've accepted it. There was a case of a guy, I should have screen capped this, but just recently in Toronto, a guy who has a barbecue. He has a restaurant that does barbecues. He went and opened up his barbecue, and customers came, and the police came and arrested him. This is the state we're in today. The stupidity of this is beyond belief. A restaurant owner was arrested and put in jail for opening up his barbecue restaurant. And they are not arresting Antifa fascists and bigots and Black Lives Matter racist bigots who are actually destroying property, beating people up in the street, threatening people, and lying about it. And they're not doing that because they are on the leftist payroll. But then again, I'm a conspiracy theorist, but it's open knowledge. I'm just saying what they're telling us. Soros and his buddies are supporting it. That Nancy Pelosi went right out and encouraged the looting and the violence. And I'm the conspiracy theorist? You know, this what's going on today should make us very afraid, not of the elites, yes, of course, of the elites and what they want to do, but of the complicity and the credulity of the regular person in accepting this. These are the masses. They are now self-policing their neighbors. They're turning their neighbors into the police for having too many people at a Thanksgiving dinner. But they're not arresting and charging looters, rioters, and vicious thugs because they're on the left. This turn of events in 2020 is absolutely the most frightening thing that's happening. The coronavirus is nothing. Climate change is nothing. What's frightening is the mentality of the sheep. All of us for not going out, all of us for not supporting that guy with his barbecue restaurant. We should all go out and eat in restaurants every single frickin' day now, just to show them that they can't do this. But it's not going to happen. I am pessimistic about this because the overwhelming majority of people, they seem to want to be afraid. They seem to want a one world government. They want Big Brother. They want a fascist, tyrannical world. Let's carry on. The CDC here tells hospitals to list COVID-19 as cause of death even if you're just assuming it only contributed. And this is back in April. Every time I point this out to people, they tell me I'm crazy. This was in the news, in the Western Journal. The CDC was open about this. And even when the CDC openly stated in August that 96% of the deaths registered as COVID-19 were only were comorbidities. In other words, a person died with COVID-19. They didn't die of COVID-19. That means that the statistics are overinflated by 25 times. Only 4 out of 100 deaths recorded as coronavirus actually died of coronavirus. And yet I'm the conspiracy theorist. Let's read this one. Business Standard. The date here, April 6th. We cannot run away to the moon. We need to develop herd immunity. Epidemiologist. This is the voice of reason that was never heard. The voice of reason that the leftist media didn't spread. The ones they called the people who wanted to kill your grandmother. No, you protect your grandmother, you protect the vulnerable, and you allow herd immunity to move forward. That's where you deal with all viruses. The herd immunity, I've said this a million times, healthy, middle-aged people, anyone under 55 and healthy, has zero to fear on this virus. Literally zero. You have more to fear from slipping in the bathtub. You have more to fear from walking on the sidewalk. But I'm the conspiracy theorist. Here, Breitbart News says, the CDC director, coronavirus death toll will be much, much, much lower than projected. This is as far back as April 7th, 2020. Breitbart reporting on this. But did you hear any of that in the mainstream media and the left media? No. They were whipping up the fear, whipping it up as much as possible, and the public were eating it up. Here, New York Post, feds classifying all coronavirus patient deaths as COVID-19 deaths regardless of the cause. April 7th, that is. April 7th. There was even a case in Florida where a guy had a motorcycle accident. He happened to be test positive for the coronavirus. Watch, by the way, the coronavirus test, even at that time, especially at that time, and even today, is about as accurate as a flip of a coin. The motorcycle accident victim was registered in Florida as a coronavirus death. Why? Likely because the hospital gets $40-something thousand extra for every one of the coronavirus deaths they deal with. And I'm the conspiracy theorist? Huh. Let's read on. Business Insider. WHO says there is no need for healthy people to wear face masks days after CDC told all Americans to cover their faces. This is in the time, this is back in April 7th, before they were getting their stories coordinated. And now, I can't tell you, and now even here in the Dominican Republic, people are afraid of anyone not wearing a face mask. I've been told a half a dozen times to put my face mask on by regular people scared by these kinds of idiots. The entire world is walking around in face masks. And why? Because they're terrified to death for nothing. They're being acclimated, they're being pushed in order to demanding a global solution to what they're being told is a global problem, the coronavirus. And these people pushing for the global solution, which is a global government, they're conflating the idea of climate change with coronavirus. And millions, probably in the 90% plus of people now really believe that we are in an existential crisis, both with climate change and with coronavirus. This is the brainwashing crap that's being pushed at us. And nobody can look behind the curtain. Very few people, except people on my channel here and a few other channels, are willing to look behind the curtain and ask the question, why do they want us so afraid of this? Do they have something to gain by us being afraid? Yes, they do. For one thing, the globalists don't like national borders because it makes business too hard for them. At least they feel it's too hard. They want one big non-bordered world. They want one big giant population of workers to draw on. So they can draw workers from the poorest of the countries and reduce labor costs. It's their world they want, and they don't want us part of it, except as workers. Army Field Hospital for COVID-19 surge leaves Seattle after 9 days. It never saw a single patient. This Army Field Hospital set up in the midst of this hysteria. This goes back to April 8th. Then there was a emergency ship hospital outside of New York. Also, never saw a single patient. And yet New Yorkers pushed their grandparents into nursing homes where they were known to be infected with coronavirus. And they didn't even put a single patient on the ship hospital. Parked right off the coast, right in the bay. Didn't use it. Edmonton, the same thing. Just a few weeks ago I talked about this. The Edmonton Hospital was set up for emergency flood to take the load off the hospitals. Never saw a single patient, and it was closed down. This story is repeated right across the Western world. Yes, there are legitimate cases, but this is not an existential crisis. This is not a global pandemic that needs this kind of response. Why is nobody saying, if it's not so bad, which it isn't, why the response? Somebody's winning off of this. The first place, the old saying, follow the money. Amazon's profits are double as a direct result of the lockdowns. The same can be said for just about every major huge corporation, from Walmart and Costco to the tech companies like Google and Zoom. They're making an unbelievable fortune, while regular people are being driven into bankruptcy and poverty, and they're going to be begging for the lowest paid jobs that these rich oligarchs are willing to give when this is over. It's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. It is not a coincidence. Does anybody seriously think that if the lockdown could be predicted to cause pain for Bezos, or even one for Bill Gates, even one of the super rich, do you think that they would allow it to happen? No, not on your life. Bezos alone has the enough influence in jurisdictions across the US to say no lockdown because it will badly affect my business. Bezos, he could say that and they would do it. The group of them together could end this lockdown and resurrect this country and get small businesses back at doing their work within minutes of making the decision to do it. That they don't is purely because they are ecstatic at the increase in power and privilege and wealth that they are winning through this. They want it to go on as long as possible. These are thieves, thugs, oligarchs, tyrants. They are pathological psychopaths. They would just as soon kill half the people on the planet Earth as long as it didn't come back to haunt them and they could profit by it. Let's carry on. Here, this is the United Nations. There should be only one fight in our world today, our shared battle against COVID-19. This came out on April 3rd. April 3rd. Fauci says we're not going back to normal without a vaccine or treatment. April 7th. And folks, I know I'm going to go to my deathbed being called a conspiracy theorist, and I don't care. I'd rather be a conspiracy theorist than a duped idiot. This is never going back to normal. You would have been called a conspiracy theorist back after World War II if you said that they're never going to get rid of income tax, because income tax was a temporary measure to pay for the war effort after World War II. And does anybody today really think they're going to ever get rid of income tax? No. But if you said they're not going to get rid of income tax, you're a conspiracy theorist. Oh, well, of course they're going to get rid of income tax when it's paid off, because they said they're going to. The government told me they're going to stop income tax. Therefore, they're going to stop income tax. We're still waiting 5,000 years later, but they're going to get rid of income tax. Yeah, okay, I'm the conspiracy theorist. Right. Here, COVID-19 isn't going to go away. Having face masks on will become the new reality to live with, WHO envoy warns. Face masks will become the new reality to live with. April 13th. And it was so easy for them to manipulate the entire first world, folks, and even the third world. Here in the Dominican Republic, they don't have to do anything about it even. And they're doing this in the US and in Canada and all around the Western world. Citizens are already policing themselves, just like in an Orwellian dystopian science fiction story. There was a video put out just recently where a guy was knocked out and thrown out of a store, literally physically thrown out of a store for not wearing a face mask. A face mask, folks. And if you remember, it was the WHO that early on also said face masks didn't do any good. And it's still questionable whether face masks in general do any good. Personally, I think they do more harm than good. New York Times, millions had risen out of poverty. Coronavirus is putting them back. This is early on too. Yes, coronavirus is putting millions back in poverty. And does anybody seriously think that the elite are concerned about that? They are not. They don't care. They know full well, and we've seen studies going back 40 years that says poverty is the biggest risk to a person's health. This was a meta-study I read about in the 1980s, that all things corrected for, the biggest and only determinative factor on health and well-being and longevity was wealth. This is 100% known to all of these people. And yet, they push the lockdowns, drive people into poverty. There's suicides, there's diseases, there's people whose life-saving surgeries are canceled while hospital beds sit empty. And are they concerned? No, they are not concerned. They are ecstatic because their power, their relative power over everything that happens on this planet is doubling every few months. They won't need a one world government at one point because they'll be so wealthy, they'll be controlling every single government on earth. Here in The Guardian, surveillance is a price worth paying to beat coronavirus, says Blair. Surveillance. Mandatory masks. Being arrested for opening a restaurant. How can we deny that this is not a tyrannical fascist state we're living in? It's not even an argument anymore. Just see what happens if you go into a restaurant without a face mask on, or if you try to assemble with more than the requisite, the limited number of people. You'll be arrested, unless you're on the left. If you're a looting, violent, rioting leftist, it's okay. It is not a question of whether we are going into fascism, whether we are descending into a tyrannical state. We're already there. It's in the minds of the people. The existence of a tyrannical state, it exists in the minds of the masses. And in the minds of the masses, they want this. They want this. We have ourselves to blame for accepting it. Let's move on. I may have to cut this thing short here because I'm getting a little bit whipped up into this, and I don't think I'll have time to finish all of these slides. But here is back in, what's the date on this one? I screen captured this in May 6. Currently in Newport, obey quarantine, obey parking, obey mask, obey distancing, obey, 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 obey. George Orwell couldn't have done it better himself. George Orwell wouldn't have had to write his books. He could have just gone out and started filming our world today. And there it is, the story right in front of you. Worse than Orwell could have imagined. We've brought it on ourselves, folks, and it's time to rebel. It is time for regular people to just go out and deliberately break the rules. Deliberately break every rule they're trying to put down, because this is ridiculous. We have put up with enough of this crap. Here, the New York Post, Greta Thunberg added to CNN's expert coronavirus panel. May 13th, 2 months after the coronavirus. They've been deliberately and consistently linking coronavirus and climate change together. The two biggest fear-mongering hoaxes. I don't believe, listen, let me be clear, I have to keep repeating myself on this. Climate change is happening. I believe climate change is happening. I also believe that it's not going to do much of anything to us. This is the grain of truth that they're using in order to lie to us. There's a change in climate change. There's a change in climate due to human activities. But what does it mean? Hardly anything at all. And all of the responses that they want to put in for addressing the so-called problem of climate change are far worse than anything that could be imagined from the so-called climate change. The new Green Deal will kill people by the millions, if not hundreds of millions, just from poverty and other issues. And your lifestyle changes. Neurosurgeon says face masks pose serious risk to healthy people. You could go on for an hour about the number of risks that comes from the inappropriate use of face masks. You know, I had this argument with someone online the other day. Look, face masks are used by surgeons in a particular kind of way in hospitals. Okay, they're rarely used for very long. They're changed in every 20 or 30 minutes. They scrub their hands and they put on gloves before they touch the face mask, and then they put the face mask on. There was one guy I saw online and I responded to him, who said that he likes wearing the face mask because it stops him from touching his face. I mean, that is one of the stupidest, most uninformed things I've heard about face masks. Your hands have all kinds of pathogens on them. You touch the face mask, where do the pathogens go? Onto the face mask. What is the face mask? It is there absorbing all kinds of nutrients out of the atmosphere and the environment, greases, oils, fats, everything that's in the environment, dust, dead skin. It's creating a nutrient-rich environment. And then your breath is almost 100% humidity on exhaling. So you've got now on the face mask a very humid, nutrient-rich environment in which pathogens grow like mad. You might as well put a petri dish on your mouth. And then people will wear these masks all day. All day. We're seeing skin diseases come up about it. We're seeing an increase in bacterial pneumonia come up from the use of face masks. And nobody's talking about it in the mainstream media. People will not use face masks, right? They cannot. And I saw a person just yesterday putting on a face mask while driving alone in a car. The stupidity of this is beyond belief. I see people jogging outside by themselves wearing a face mask. Folks, it's ridiculous what's going on here. The masses have been entirely brainwashed, frightened out of their minds over nothing. This is boogeyman stuff, and there's a reason for it. What's his name? Sherman did some director, I can't remember his name now, but he did a film on just this, a sci-fi film in which community leaders frightened their community members from going towards the border, and it was all about manipulating the community members. Cults are like this. They're turning the entire world into one big frightened cult. The cult of end of the world, fear-mongering, existential fear. They're propping up, trying to make people as frightened as they can that this is like an end of the world stuff. Listen to us, repent, come back to us, or your life will be ended. Climate change will destroy life on Earth. Coronavirus is going to kill your grandmother if you don't wear a mask alone in a car. The lunacy of this is just, it cannot be exaggerated. It has gone long way past farcical at this point. Long ways past. We've put up with enough. It's time for civil disobedience en masse in the streets. And it only takes a few courageous people to start that. There's a herd mentality amongst humans. When masses of people start to see that the other people standing out against this terror, they will join you. It is terrorism. We're being terrorized by our own elite and our own leaders. Sweden's coronavirus strategy will soon be the world's. It should be, but it isn't. This is May 12th, when Sweden was being shown to have, without a lockdowns, with business going on as normal, to be recovering from the coronavirus better than most countries. And the question here, how to get there safely? Look, we're not getting there at all because the elites don't want you to wake up. They want the fear. They want everybody to live in fear of climate change, in fear of coronavirus. And if coronavirus and climate change don't work, they'll create a new fear. Here, Forbes magazine. This is in, where's the date on this? I don't know what the date is, but this is fairly recent. Forbes magazine. Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. This was written for the World Economic Forum, a contributor to the World Economic Forum, a young female, wrote this on a blog, and the Forbes printed it. Forbes. Life has never been better. They don't want you to own anything because they want to own everything. The Great Reset. This is from the site of the World Economic Forum, their own words. Let's read their own words. And this is coming back to Trudeau and his use of the words reset, and his critics being criticized as being conspiracy theorists. Anybody who speaks out against the nonsense that's going on, the tyranny, the fascism, the destruction of your freedoms, the elimination, the encouraging your neighbors to police you so that you don't stick your head up, so you don't stick your head outside of your own house without the requisite clothing of a slave on your face. There is an urgent need for global stakeholders to cooperate in simultaneously managing the direct consequences of COVID-19 crisis. To improve the state of the world, the Economic Forum is starting the Great Reset Initiative. The Great Reset Initiative. The World Economic Forum. Trudeau is quite aware of this. Trudeau spoke to the UN on this very topic, using the word reset. And when called to task on it, his critics were called conspiracy theorists, folks. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. The opportunity. This is the World Economic Forum. As we enter a unique window of opportunity to shape the recovery, this initiative will offer insights to help inform all those determining the future state of global relations, the direction of national economies, the priorities of societies, the nature of business models, and the management of a global commons. Drawing from the vision and vast expertise of the leaders engaged across the forum's communities, the Great Reset Initiative has a set of dimensions to build a new social contract that honors the dignity of every human being. Fancy word, dignity of every human being, whom they do not respect at all. Folks, don't fall for that kind of blatant lie. Here, the World Economic Forum. Now is the time for a great reset. To achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. They've been preaching this exact same thing before the coronavirus. It is no coincidence that they're using the very same things, they're preaching the very same things as a response to the coronavirus as they did about climate change. Every country, from the United States to China, must participate. Every industry, from oil and gas to tech, must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism. This is what Trudeau was referring to. And when his critics called him to task on this, they were called conspiracy theorists. And yet here it is, in black and white. It's tyranny and fascism growing exponentially fast in our world. All of this will exacerbate the climate and social crises that were already underway. They're talking about the COVID-19. Some countries have already used COVID-19 crisis as an excuse to weaken environmental protections and enforcement. That's crap. They're fear-mongering here again. They're trying to motivate everyone to accept a totalitarian state of a one-world government. When they say all governments of the world and all industries must comply, how are they intending to do that? There is no such thing as bringing all of that stuff that they mentioned into compliance here. Every country, from the United States to China, must participate. Every industry, from oil to gas to tech, must be transformed. How do you think you make that kind of compliance happen? There's only one way. That's world governance. The Great Reset, did I complete that last one here? The Great Reset agenda have three main components. The first would steer the market toward fairer outcomes. This is social justice language. This is exactly what the feminist social justice warriors in the United Nations, the radical feminist movement, have been always pushing for. How do you steer a market towards fairer outcomes? Totalitarianism. You get rid of markets. You don't steer a market towards fairer outcomes. Markets don't work like that. No. You do wealth redistribution through a fascistic state. Moreover, governments should implement long overdue reforms that promote more equitable outcomes. SJW feminism, right there. Depending on the country, these may include changes to wealth taxes, withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, new rules governing intellectual property, trade, and competition. In other words, total control by the state. One world government stuff. This is all one world government language. The second component of a Great Reset agenda would ensure that investments advance shared goals. Investment, shared goals. Whose shared goals? Such as equality and sustainability. Again, SJW language. This means, for example, building green urban infrastructure and creating incentives for industries to improve their track record on environmental, social, and governance metrics. The Green New Deal, folks. This term green is like mama and apple pie. Baseball, mama and apple pie. Nobody's going to criticize green because you got the word green in there. And if you criticize their motives when they talk about green, then you somehow want their mother or their grandmother to die a horrible death. The third and final priority of a Great Reset agenda is to harness the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution to support the public good. The public good. The public good. The greater good. These are the socialist tyranny words, especially by addressing health and social challenges. Yeah, by allowing lives to be destroyed, by encouraging suicide through the destruction of businesses and social isolation, by withholding people's access to life-saving treatment while keeping hospital beds empty. Look, this is all promissory words. These are flowery words, but look at their actions now. Give them that power, and their actions now will look like super kindness, like they were really holding back. They will be looking like a 2-year-old child when in fact it's Mike Tyson in his prime coming to get you. Let's read on here. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future. How is it that they claim to want us all to enjoy and participate in a new prosperous future when they've just spent a year destroying people's lives around the world and encouraging the elimination of your freedoms and setting neighbor against neighbor? These are the people who claim they're going to give you access to a healthier, more equitable, and prosperous future. People need to wake up. We've had enough of this crap. They've pushed the entire Western world to the brink, and it's time for people to deliberately use civil disobedience. Force them to force their hand and show how tyrannical they are. They're already doing it. Arresting a guy who's having a barbecue at his restaurant. A regular, everyday guy. Here from Prince Charles. Pandemic is chance to reset global economy, says Prince Charles. This is in June 3rd. Prince of Wales unveils a 5-point plan to stimulate sustainable economic growth. You know what that is? That means Green New Deal stuff. That means one world government to enforce this all the way around the world. And I'm the conspiracy theorist for pointing it out. I'm reading just what I can find on the media. These are their own words. Their own words. When their own words constitute a conspiracy, believe them. It is. COVID-19 and the Great Reset. Here's what you need to know. Trudeau's UN speech, conspiracy theories, and more explained. Now, this is in the news, and this is in Canada. Okay? In Canada, for all of you who may not remember, as a Canadian, I know this quite well, that the Trudeau government owns almost every media organization, with the exception of a few right-wing medias like Rebel News. They all protect Trudeau. They all bend over backwards to rationalize everything he does in his favor. Let's have a look. Canada believes that a strong, this is quoting Trudeau's words here, Canada believes that a strong, coordinated response across the world and across sectors is essential, he said. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. Okay? The exact words we've just been reading about from multiple sources around the world, including the UN and former Prime Ministers of the UK, including Prince Charles, including the World Economic Forum, including contributors to the World Economic Forum, the same words. Provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance. Remember the other words. Our short window of opportunity. To accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change. Again, they have enormously increased the numbers of the poor and the desperate. Their actions over this last year have pushed millions of people into poverty, have pushed people to suicide, have destroyed businesses, have canceled life-saving surgeries for no reason, and they have the audacity to say that they are in our interest, like extreme poverty. They've just created extreme poverty. And look at this. Our pre-pandemic efforts. Trudeau's Liberal government is a full-scale leftist, one-world climate change alarmist. Their pre-pandemic efforts were all about creating a one-world government with worldwide jurisdiction to enforce green economies in the name of climate change. Not a conspiracy theory. They're just using climate change as their latest and most greatest lever to convince people to accept that their leftist agenda around the world. What is the Great Reset? The Great Reset is an initiative launched earlier this year by the World Economic Forum. This is, I think, CBC News printing this. CBC or one of the other ones, or Global News. I can't remember which one in this one. To help inform decisions around global recovery amid COVID-19 crisis. All of this smokescreen, this COVID-19, everything justified, anything is justifiable by saying COVID-19 crisis. Just like anything is justifiable saying climate crisis, because they want you to believe that this is a universal existential crisis of life and death over life on Earth. Nothing less than that. This is end of the world cult stuff here we're talking about. According to the World Economic Forum website, the initiative will tackle the areas of global relations, direction of national economies, priorities of societies, the nature of business models, and management of a global commons. Everything there is all about one world government. There's no such thing as dealing with those priorities if you don't have an administrative structure capable of enforcing the rules you want to apply. That's the only thing. You don't have to call it a one world government. Call it the United Nations if you want to. It's still a one world government if it has the teeth. What is the conspiracy theory? This is again covering for Trudeau in the leftist Canadian media. The conspiracy theories around the Great Reset are centered around the notion that the World Economic Forum initiative is a plot by an international group of elites to strip citizens of their property rights, force them to get vaccinations, and create isolation camps for anyone who resists. In other words, a conspiracy theory is centered around the stated goals of those very elites. But they're going to call it a conspiracy theory, and since, well, conspiracy theory is looked down upon by the public for the last 40 years, somehow we're going to overlook the fact that they want forced vaccinations. They want to bring in health passports for use for flying, for entry into public buildings, for access to services. What is that if not forced vaccination? Property rights. We just saw them encouraging that 2030, I will own nothing and I will be happier than ever. Well, owning nothing. You will own nothing because you will have no property rights. How else would they usher in a world in which regular people owned nothing? Isolation camps. They don't need isolation camps. They're isolating people in their own homes. They're making you afraid or illegal to leave your own home without a reasonable excuse. That was actually in Australian law. In fact, Canada has floated the idea of so-called quarantine camps. I don't know if it's gotten any further, but that was in the news about 3-4 weeks ago. People have very short memory. In response to this on Friday, Trudeau said, "We're seeing a lot of people fall prey to misinformation." Misinformation. How he loves to use that word. Where is the misinformation that's coming from quoting the very people who are saying these words? And if conservative MPs and others want to start talking about conspiracy theories, that's their choice. I'm going to stay focused on helping Canadians get through this. What a lying... I'm going to bite my tongue on the word I want to say there, but he's lying. He's calling it a conspiracy theory when you repeat the very words that they say. Let's carry on. This is another one. This is in BBC. Coronavirus pandemic, quote, Great Reset theory and a false vaccine claim debunked. Justin Trudeau and the Great Reset. We start with the revival of the baseless conspiracy theory known as the Great Reset, which claims a group of world leaders orchestrated a pandemic to take control of the global economy. Well, okay, first of all, they didn't need to orchestrate a pandemic. They could have used anything, anytime, but they did orchestrate the hysteria. This virus objectively is almost totally benign and easy to control if we focused on the elderly and the vulnerable from the beginning, easily. And it does not take a genius to know this. And many people have pointed it out, but their voices were squashed. They were squashed by the very people who want to make everybody in the world afraid. And take control of the global economy. That's what they're doing. That's what they're saying they're going to do. They're doing it. They're saying they're going to do it. And when we use their very words to say what they're going to do, we're called conspiracy theorists. The conspiracy theorist has its origin in a genuine plan entitled The Great Reset, drawn up by the World Economic Forum, the organizers of an annual conference for high-profile figures from politics and business. The plan explores how countries might recover from the economic damage caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Let's be clear here, folks. Let's be really clear. The coronavirus pandemic did not cause $1 worth of economic damage. All of the economic damage was caused by the policies, the response created by the elite leaders of this world in every major country. Their response to the coronavirus pandemic is what caused all of the damage. All of the damage. And the damage is only felt by the regular people. Small business owners, people who aren't employed by the government, whose salaries are protected no matter whether they go to work or not. The elite have not been damaged. They have profited enormously. They have profited in a criminal level degree. If they're so concerned about helping the economy and the regular people, Amazon, give 50% of your profits straight back to the regular people. You think Bezos will do that? Not on your life. Bezos would rather sit there and watch 3 billion people starve to death than give back any of his profits. His profits are his lever for increasing his power and control over this world, which is over you and me, who he sees as work slaves. And all of his people like them. Don't fall for their silver-tongued crap. And these people like BBC and CBC and the news organizations in Canada, they're all covering for these elite leaders. It started trending globally on Twitter last week when a video of Prime Minister Trudeau at the UN meeting saying the pandemic provided an opportunity for a reset went viral. This language has been used since 2-3 weeks into the pandemic. This sparked fresh claims from people within Canada and further afield that a cabal of global leaders is using the pandemic to introduce a range of damaging socialist environmental policies. Incredible, but yes, they are doing it. When asked about conspiracy theories at the end of the week, Mr. Trudeau said, "I think we're in a time of anxiety where people are looking for reasons for things that are happening to them. We're seeing a lot of people fall prey to disinformation." Reasons, just look at this, folks. He's calling it a conspiracy theory. Reasons for things happening to them. What is happening to people? You're being subjected to laws that restrict your freedom. You can't go into restaurants. They're arresting restaurant owners. They're throwing people out of places who don't wear a mask. These things aren't just happening to people. These are policies created by these leaders. They are being done to people. They're not happening to people. Almost no one, very few people are dying from this disease. And we're not even doing the best to protect them because they should be protected. The vulnerable should be protected, not the regular people restricted. Reasons for things that are happening to them. They're being done to them by people like Trudeau. I'm Canadian, and if I go back to Canada, I have to self quarantine for 2 full weeks, and I have to have a plan to present at the border, and it's quite a detailed plan of how I'm going to do that, where I'm going to do it, how I'm going to get food, how I'm going to take care of myself for those 2 weeks. And if I don't have that plan, the Canadian government has the right to refuse me back into my own country, even with a passport. Things aren't just happening to us, folks. They're being done to us. People are having their scheduled surgeries, life-saving surgeries, canceled. That's not just happening to them, it's being done to them. The police are being ordered to allow the leftists to riot. They're to destroy, to loot. It doesn't just happen on its own. It's being done. Being done means it's deliberate. Small businesses have been ordered under huge penalties, legal crimes, to shut down. That didn't happen to them. It's being done to them. It's being done by the elite. Let's not be stupid about this. Let's stop being sheep, at least. Don't cower before the accusation of being a conspiracy theorist. That is an attempt to shame you and shut you up. It is nothing more than an attempt to shut down their critics. Even when you repeat their words right back to them, they will call you a conspiracy theorist. Don't be shamed into shutting up under the accusation of being a conspiracy theorist. Nothing is happening to you. It's being done to you by elite leaders. Let's read on here a little bit, and then I'm going to have to call it closed for today. A video from August, which now has 3 million views on YouTube, believes only Donald Trump can thwart this secret plot of Covid-19 to bring U.S. economy to its knees for the reset can begin. Possibly there's some. There are some overstretches of reach out here in people with their theories about why and what's going on. There's no question we're going to have people making mistakes and overreach. That doesn't mean that everybody who criticizes these tyrannical, fascist elite is a conspiracy theorist. But they want everyone to believe that. This is all about clearing the way. This is about rationalizing and getting the public to accept unquestioned the things to being imposed from above on us. One more. Then this is a film, The Hold Up, promises to reveal the truth about COVID-19. Instead, it promotes a slew of previously debunked claims. Listen to this. This is in a BBC article, including the allegations that wearing masks is dangerous and global elites somehow planned the pandemic. They're trying to imply here that the global elites did not deliberately create the response to the pandemic by using this plan the pandemic. That's broad terminology. It puts in your imagination that they somehow deliberately created and released a virus. They don't have to deliberately create and release a virus. They created the response that destroyed the economies around the world, that punished regular people, and that made the ultra-rich twice as wealthy as they were before. You can't make a better business plan for the ultra-wealthy than that. A plan that made them twice as wealthy as a result of people suffering and dying. And that masks, this allegation that masks are dangerous. They are dangerous. It's not an allegation. These are doctors and scientists that are making this point out. As I explained earlier, they are an ideal environment for growing pathogens in front of your face, where with every breath, you have a new opportunity to suck them into your lungs where they can grow even more. These masks are dangerous because they're not used in the way they're designed to be used. Commentary. What's the deal with the Great Reset? This is global news. Another one. They're all on board with rationalizing Trudeau here and helping Trudeau. Do you know that the media, not long ago, their legitimate role in society was to put the hard questions to the leaders, to the governments, the people who affect our lives. That was their job. It was to criticize them. It was to look for their bad behavior and haul it out and hold them accountable. They don't do that at all in Canada now. All of the major media in Canada, they hide the agenda of the government. They rationalize it. They sell it to the public now. They are propagandists. Let's read this. There's a push underway to overhaul economic systems in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. It even has its own name, logo, website, annual summit meetings, and a virtual series of online dialogues to push the goals of the movement. It's called the Great Reset, an idea advanced by Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, part of the extremely wealthy elite. According to BBC News story this week, the conspiracy theory is rooted in a baseless belief that COVID-19 virus was created in a lab and deliberately unleashed on the world by evil geniuses who want to take over the global economy. No, that's not the whole story. We don't need evil geniuses. We have motive. We know it was created in a lab. They've said that. Whether it was deliberately or accidentally released is regardless. In the very early days, the Chinese government put out photos of people lying dead in the street as if they fell over on the spot immediately upon exposure to this virus. Those have been hidden now. And they are taking over the global economy. They're even telling us they're taking over the global economy. How is it a conspiracy theory when they're telling us they're doing it, that they're going to do it, and how they're going to do it? And they're telling us that we're going to own nothing in 2030 and we're going to be happy about it. How is that a conspiracy theory? What they did here in this article is they throw in the word evil genius to give you this idea of these comedy movies with evil geniuses out there plotting the control of the world. They didn't put that in there by accident, and nobody who's criticizing the actions of these elite and the COVID-19 tyrants are using the words evil geniuses. No, this is just everyday pursuit of extraordinary power. Speaking by video, video conference at a virtual United Nations meeting last week, Trudeau appeared to back the Great Reset agenda. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. We've read this before. It's been repeated, and it's being sold to the public as conspiracy theory stuff while they go ahead and do the exact things that the so-called conspiracy theorists are saying they're trying to do. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts, as we discussed before. After Trudeau was criticized for the comments, he appeared to back the notion that any assault on the idea of an economic reset was driven by conspiratorial crackpots. I think we're in a time of anxiety, blah, blah, blah. We're seeing a lot of people fall prey to disinformation. It's not disinformation. It's your very own words. I'm getting tired of repeating this, but wait, this article here actually makes a point, a good point here. But wait, this is not Bigfoot, chemtrails, or fake moon landings we're talking about here. This is a conspiracy theory apparently hiding in plain sight, and Trudeau's critics say they are completely within their rights to question what he means by a reset and reimagined economic systems. It's on the World Economic Forum website, and it's what Prime Minister is saying in his own words, Conservative MP Pierre Poilievre told him, the author. And that's it. It's in their own words, and when the Conservative MP calls him to task on his own words, Trudeau dismisses him as a conspiracy theorist and says that he's falling prey to disinformation. What a pile of crap, folks. All we need to do here, and what we need to do here, is massive civil disobedience. We should not be following what these leaders are saying. They're not leaders, they're manipulators, they're tyrants, they're fascists. They're not after our own goods. They're silver-tongued idiots. Now is the time to reimagine our economic systems. Now is exactly the wrong time to use the Canadian economy as a laboratory or guinea pig to play out experiments of international financial elites. That's exactly what they're playing out. Poilievre said Trudeau should be concentrating on getting people back to work in the economic system we already have. Exactly. Now is the time to focus on the basics of getting people safely back into their jobs that they had only 6 or 7 months ago to earn income, pay taxes, contribute to their communities. But that's not what the elite wants. The elite is perfectly happy to have you die of starvation while they line their pockets. I'm going to have to call this off soon because this is going on longer than I can spend today. I'm going to just skip through ahead on some of these things here. This is, you can read these at your leisure if you pause the video during replay. This is August 20, Victoria Forum. This is the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada is involved with this Great Reset. We shouldn't be surprised. This is the World Economic Forum. They are dictating, or at least this is a community of people who control everything in the world. So I'm going to flip through this, and I do encourage you to read what's going on, because this is coming from the highest reaches of power on down. Covid-19 is a shock and an opportunity. This is the Bank of Canada saying this. Covid-19, a bank. They don't know anything about coronavirus. Pivot to a greener, smarter economy. Focus here on climate-related issues. This is the Bank of Canada. Parroting leftist ideas. Our contributions to this scenario. To start, we view climate change risk. How we view climate change risk. Again, apocalyptic themes are connected. COVID-19, climate change. The Bank of Canada. The elites. The elite of the elites here. Following the World Economic Forum. Folks, if you can't see a pattern here, there's no hope for you. We all need to wake up. We're being sold a bill of goods. We're being tempted to accept a life of slavery. Read some of this stuff here at your leisure, or go to the article itself from the Bank of Canada. A link will be in the description of the video. I have to get going shortly. Here they're putting out the same unsupportable curves to push the fear. Push the fear for people to accept these things. Here they've got their 2030 timeline, and this is somehow CO2 levels versus, what is this? Some chance of a disorderly problems, of orderly solutions, whatever. Again, fear-mongering. Fear-mongering at its best, coming from all the highest reaches of society. Why would they be trying to frighten the masses so? And we've accepted it. We're already living in a state of tyranny and fascism. Whoopsie, this is not for here. Whoops, okay, I've closed it up. So folks, I'm going to have to say goodbye for now. And I'm very glad that you could join me in Coffee with Steve today. Here we did a rather fast review of 8 months of coronavirus responses and pandemics and craziness that's been going on forever, or since the beginning of this pandemic. So do enjoy your day today. And as I like to remind people, do something you love today, do something you love every day. And if you don't have something you love, find something you love to do and do it. Because it doesn't matter how good or how bad it gets. This is your life every day. We can address the issues, but we still should take enjoyment of every single day. So with that said, I hope you join me again next week on Coffee with Steve, where we'll be going over things that are happening in our world today, as unbelievable as it is, and it seems like the Twilight Zone at times. Until next time.